Thanks everyone for coming. So today we're going to talk about the ZeroTouch Puzzle and how you can build in a truly zero-touch workflow for both systems and end users. I'm Scott Reed. I'm a solutions architect at JumpCloud. Created the JumpCloud PowerShell module and the ZeroTouch workflows. And you can find me on GitHub and Twitter at ScottD3V. Layout and agenda. So first we'll talk about the ZeroTouch Puzzle. We'll kind of talk about concepts, and we'll introduce something called Prestage user enrollments and look at how we can start to pre-stage those users with resources and how JumpCloud can help with that. We'll go through a demo where we look at a user who we have in this state, walk them through our zero-touch workflow, and then look at how their account looks after they go through the flow. After that, we're going to get into the technical gritty and look at the actual workflow, what's going on behind the scenes and how the user, how it's presented to the user. And then finally see how we can take the workflow and actually put it together in our environments. So the Mac zero-touch puzzle, right? We all want to be able to onboard users and systems and take our hands off and let it happen. So DEP makes deploying systems a breeze. It's very easy to enroll machines into MDM, have them come through, get profiles and policies applied. But what about the deployment and the activation of these users' companies' accounts? Them actually having their accounts on their systems, having access to their email and all the resources they need to get their job done. So we know users are going to need access to more and more applications. And those applications are going to be in the cloud. They're going to be things that they need to get their job done. That may also include access to files, networks, and of course, their systems. So as admins, we need a solution that helps us securely manage and deploy all these user accounts to their machines. And DEP doesn't do much for this. This is about the systems. So DEP helps ensure users' machines are configured, but does little to actually get their company accounts activated. If we think about day one, I'm sure in a lot of offices, we got a lot of sticky notes going down. This is your temp password. This is our onboarding flow. Put on the whiteboard, and users are going to be changing those temporary passwords to activate their accounts. Onboarding systems is really only half of the zero-touch puzzle. What about getting them access and getting their company accounts activated? So today we're going to talk about something that I'm calling pre-stage user enrollments, where leveraging JumpCloud and a cloud identity provider, you can actually prepare user accounts and allow users to activate these user accounts as part of your DEP flow. So pre-staged user enrollments are the idea of pending user accounts, accounts without a password, no temporary password being created prior to a user's first day at the company. You can create these accounts and get them configured with all the different resources they need, and you don't have to set a password for them. Using JumpCloud's Direct User Service, we, as JumpCloud, are the identity provider that use our protocols to push out your password once it's set to all of your accounts. This happens during activation. During the DEP flow, users actually set their password, and this is the password that they use to access these pre-staged resources. So how does this all work? So what we're going to see today is how you can use JumpCloud and dep notify and bundle this up in a PKG that can be thrown down by your MDM to facilitate this workflow. So here's an example of a screen. And again, this is DEP notify. So this could be branded. This is something that's going to come down directly as the user sets up their account. And they're going to have the option to click a button and identify themselves. This identification process, there's optionality here. So this is one example where perhaps they use their company email to find their account and activate it. Jessica here knows her company email. She activates her account, and here she is setting her secure credential. JumpCloud, as the identity provider, can push this credential out and actually provision an account to her machine with the password she sets, which also gets propagated to all the other endpoints that JumpCloud manages. So on a user's first day, when they come in and unbox their machine, their workflow they're presented with not only onboards their system, but also onboards their account. There's no concept of Jessica ever having a temporary password. Instead, she identifies herself and she can set that first password for the account. So an example here of an account deployment, Jessica's machine gets pushed down her account. I've also pushed down a default admin account. And the local system accounts are configured in a way that has the naming convention you want and the security policies you want. Naming convention is key as we think about how we want to manage things. So here's an example of that account. Again, we have a standard naming convention, which we're all looking for, and this is all happening through this zero-touch workflow leveraging the JumpCloud agent. Boom. Super important. Secure tokens. Secure tokens are part of the mix. The JumpCloud agent, and we'll talk about the things that it can do. One of the things it has the ability to do is manage secure tokens. And that happens with a service account. So with this flow, we ensure that that service account is there, and the accounts that we're pushing down have valid secure tokens. So once Jessica signed into her machine, these local system accounts are configured to access all of the resources that have been pre-staged. This flow gives admin certainty and ensures consistency in the accounts and the naming convention that are pushed down, as well as the security settings and policies being enforced on these machines. Zero-touch workflows, really the idea that we're looking for is to have the ability to bootstrap both the device and the user account. So a stack of machines, if all users are using the same hardware, a user can take a machine off the stack, configure it for themselves, and that's now their machine. It's configured itself for them. So for those of us, just out of curiosity, how many people are JumpCloud customers or have signed in the JumpCloud admin console before? So I'll do my best. We're going to walk through some basics of JumpCloud. So the mission of JumpCloud is that it's one directory to rule them all. Connect any person to any resource from anywhere. And we do that from protocol-driven administration. JumpCloud is cloud-based, no concept of a domain and a network-based perimeter that defines authentication. Instead, our agent, which can sit on Mac, Windows, and Linux, its sole purpose is to do identity management, the real directory tasks on those machines. In addition to that, we've got heterogeneous control, so you can install the agent Mac, Windows, and Linux, and there's no sort of, you've got the ability to leverage different protocols that centralize on one identity being the source of truth. So JumpCloud has the ability to write directly into both G Suite and Office 365, and also has Cloud LDAP, Cloud Radius, and SSO offering. Our Office 365 and G Suite directory integration allows us to push passwords in and be the source of truth. So during this flow, when the user sets their password, they're setting their password for their email in Office 365, G Suite, or both. In addition to being able to set passwords in these, we also have optionality for being the attribute authority. So for things like department, phone number, and we can also provision and suspend accounts. So JumpCloud can provision and also suspend access to those accounts in both G Suite and Office 365. From a network perspective, JumpCloud offers Radius as a service. So this is Cloud Radius, users authenticating to the Wi-Fi with a password that's specific to them. In addition to that, we also offer Radius reply attributes. So based on JumpCloud user group membership, that can define which VLAN or which segment of the network that someone may have access to without authentication. File server access. When we think about storage, JumpCloud allows users to authenticate to that storage using their credentials, and the protocols that drive that are going to be LDAP and SMB. So that Samba service also allows for group-based authentication. So by being a member of a group, you can access to certain resources in that storage. Applications. We've talked about the integrations, the directory integrations with Office 365 and G Suite, but we also have a SAML 2.0 offering. So using SAML 2.0 through the JumpCloud user console, user can get access to their cloud apps and get access through their group membership to which apps they can access. And all these things can be pre-staged prior to that user having a password on their account. So the group membership can define what the user needs to access prior to them ever logging in. So let's look at our user, Jessica Flax, who we're going to see a full demo through. And let's look at her before we run through the flow. So this orange sign in JumpCloud means password pending. So this user is created without a password. No activation email. They are just a user information with no access to anything. For Jessica, let's go ahead and see. We've added her some user groups. So she's a member of 3 groups. We've got the all-employee group, the back-end engineer groups, and the G Suite sync groups. And this is how we define access to who can access what. The all-employee group is going to put her into JumpCloud LDAP. So simply by being a member of this group, she is then going to be exposed through JumpCloud LDAP. Everything in JumpCloud is implicit deny, so we have to grant access to everything we want that user to be a part of. There's no sort of default access that someone gets with the platform. The backend engineers group is going to grant her access to 2 SSO applications, one Amazon link that's going to, it looks like it's named engineering roles, and another Meraki app that's called read only. In addition to this grants her access to 2 Radius networks. Looks like we've got a HA setup, and this Radius network actually has a VLAN tag applied to it, so that when Jessica authenticates in, her hardware, the wireless hardware, will actually place her on a segment of that network that may give her privileged access to something. Again, she is a back-end engineer. In addition, we've got her in the JumpCloud LDAP group back-end engineers, which means that inside of LDAP, now she's a member of 2 different groups. So if we've connected an LDAP endpoint to talk to JumpCloud, we could have the back-end engineer group give her some level of access to that endpoint. Final thing, we've got a group called G Suite Sync. With her enabled for G Suite Sync, her account gets provisioned into G Suite without a password. That's part of the directory integration. So simply by adding her into the G Suite Sync group is going to create her account in G Suite. So back to the users tab, we can see that Jessica is not bound to any systems, and this is to be expected. This is going to happen when she goes through DEP enrollment. The purpose of her account existing and being pre-staged is that when she goes and activates it, she's going to bind herself to her system, and that system's going to become hers. In addition, we've got just on the directories tab here, we can see the checkboxes for G Suite and LDAP, and these are indirect associations that are happening through her group membership. So not quite as heavy on the bold there, which means that that's an indirect association. By being a member of a group, she's a member of these directories. So inside of Google Admin, this is what happens when you check that G Suite box. What are we looking at here? So up at the top, this is going to be the admin report, and we can see that her user was created and that a license has been assigned. And if you look under the admin there, it says SA tenant. What does that mean? When you authenticate to G Suite from JumpCloud or Office 365, you do so with an admin account. That admin account, think of it as a service account. I certainly could have authenticated with my personal account, but then I wouldn't have this great level of visibility as to what changes were coming from JumpCloud. So what I do is I create a service account in G Suite with admin permissions and use that to turn on the sync between the two. So if there's any sort of change with my status at the company, that doesn't have the risk of taking down the connection between JumpCloud and G Suite. Also just makes reporting very nice. So let's get into the demo. Before we do it, let's talk about the stack we're working with. So bottom up, machines enrolled in DEP. From there, we've got an MDM. The MDM is going to push down what I call the IAM application, which in this case is JumpCloud, right? The piece that's doing the account management. And then that is going to connect the employee to the resources. So here's our demo stack. We've got DEP. Simple MDM is the MDM I've chosen because it's simple to get JumpCloud on the system. And then from there, we've seen JumpCloud for Jessica's account is pre-staged. And it's pre-staged for G Suite. She's got access to 2 SSO apps. And then I've also got Meraki up there because we've got Radius. This is VM though, so we won't be demoing that, but understand that she could access a Wi-Fi network as well with her credentials. All right, hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be awesome. So enrolling DEP, selecting our time zone.
Didn't chance the live one?
No. Did not. What's this? We're going to talk about this. This is what we call the enrollment account. This is an account that exists to create the JumpCloud service account, and it is going to be yanked from the machine, giving JumpCloud full ability to control the secure tokens. We'll get into it a little bit more in a moment. So machine comes up, poof, DEP notify. User can't get out of this. They're driven through this workflow. Unless they're super smart, they go multiple spaces. Keep their hands off the machines. So optionality. This is a step where the user identify themselves, and we have options here that we'll look into. The example I went with is company email. User has located their account. They get the option to set a password. And here they have the ability to make sure that the password satisfies the complexity requirements we want. After setting a password, this is when the JumpCloud agent and the JumpCloud API are being used to take that account that's activated and push it down to the system. So at this time, we're doing those things in the back end where through the PKG and the API, JumpCloud is pushing that account that was just activated on it down to the system. In addition to this, we're going to yank the enrollment account. And by yanking the enrollment account, we're going to log the user out so that what they see is just their account. And my default admin account, because everyone wants a backdoor on their systems, right? When we get in front of it, we want to be able to log in. That's something that we've done here. So here's Jessica. Thus far, she's known her password, and she's signed in with it. She gets the rainbow wheel to welcome her to her Mac. The pinwheel of patience. And we know she's on a JumpCloud managed machine because of the JumpCloud Mac app. And of course, the first thing she does is check her secure token status. You know, she wants to put a ticket in as fast as possible. And boom, it's enabled. So Jessica, right, what we could do from here, we're going to show that she can sign into those Prestage resources. So she knows her email account. My thought is maybe we push a desktop background, go to her email next or something cool like that. But she's just proving at this step that those resources that were pre-staged, she's got access to. So logging into her Gmail account. And then we're also going to get a quick taste of the JumpCloud user console. In the JumpCloud user console, we can take security to the next level by enforcing things like MFA. So Jessica right now is in an enrollment period, which means that when she logs in, she's going to be prompted to set up MFA. What's she going to do? Not set it up. She's got 6 more days. And in the console, SSO, one-click access away from her apps. In this case, she's got an AWS app that's got multiple roles assigned to it. And I think the other app we're going to show is that she's got read-only access to Meraki. So this is the concept of kind of the end-to-end user enrollment, where of course the MDM at this point could be doing a number of other things in terms of configuring the system. Oh, I got this thing. Let's get out of full screen. Cool. And let's go one slide forward. Cool. So this is Jessica's post-enrollment status. She's activated. She's not orange anymore. That orange color meant she didn't have a password. Green means she has a password. In addition to being activated, she's got a password expiration date, so we can see when she set her password. And she is bound to her DEP enrolled system. Her G Suite account is active, and we can see if we look at the log here, we've got a password change come through. And of course, that's going to be done through that SA tenant. So JumpCloud being the identity provider pushing into G Suite, that password change comes in logged under that service account. Her account is active for Radius Wi-Fi off, something that we can't do on the VM, but she could certainly join. So we think about rolling this out. Those systems are probably going to start off on a guest network. After being on the guest network for enrollment, they'll then probably log into their company Wi-Fi. And of course, she's one click away from those SSO applications. In addition to this, I talked about the JumpCloud Mac app. So the power of the JumpCloud Mac app is that on the local machine, the user can update their JumpCloud identity, which is going to propagate out to all of those resources. So having that app on the system allows her to change her password in either the directory services, LDAP, Samuel doesn't really have a password, the agent, so it obviously changes locally, or if she had access to multiple machines, and also Radius. So that change locally can update to all and propagate out to all those different endpoints. So let's break down the workflow. It starts when your machine's enrolls with PKG deployment. So her Mac computer is enrolled in DEP. The DEP, of course, registers with the MDM, and the MDM pushes the enrollment user account to the machine. The PKG that's been scoped for device level installation also gets deployed to the system, and it starts installing as soon as she goes through enrollment. This PKG, again, needs to be scoped for device level installation and is really the meat and potatoes of what drives this workflow. The enrollment user is super important, and this enrollment user is simply there to install the JumpCloud agent with the service account, and then it gets yanked from the machine. So what we see here is this is incredible UX, right? full name, enter the password welcome1. This is the idea of this account that we're pushing down. Because of JumpCloud's presence on the system, it's only going to exist for the first 30 seconds as an admin account. And as soon as we get the agent on there, we flip that account from an admin account to a standard account. Because we're taking over the screen with dep notify and full screen, the process of that screen showing up tells us that once we get our workflow configured correctly, that welcome account is going to become a standard user, and we're going to have the JumpCloud agent there to do the identity management on that machine. So this enrollment user is certainly a new concept, but security is baked in there to ensure that we take it over and it doesn't become a vector on our network. It's gone as soon as machines go through enrollment. So the enrollment account sign in is the next step. So we've got the PKG down, the user signs in with their enrollment account. We're working down here, and here's the screen. Certainly, this is something that could be changed. All we need to know is that the credentials that users put in here at their first login is a known item to you as an admin. You need that because these are parameters that go into the backend script that ensure that our service account can be granted a secure token. With the chain of trust, we've got to know the credentials of that first user with the secure token to grant our service account that secure token.
So this will work with an out-of-the-box workflow.
Yep.
The user will unopen the box, all set.
Yeah.
We'll work with a out-of-the-box workflow,
Yep.
meaning the person will open the box, open their computer, and they get to that screen.
Yep.
Cool.
So next thing that happens, and again, we're working down, is we have the system, the user signs into the enrollment account, and the PKG is now in control. And this PKG is going to launch dep notify, and while it launches it and it's in that full screen, install the JumpCloud agent. The system's going to register with JumpCloud, and then an interesting authentication mechanism is going to be used. With SaaS services and specifically JumpCloud, our platform is fairly extensible. And there's more ways to authenticate to our API than just using an API key. The System Context API allows systems using the presence of the JumpCloud conf to modify their direct associations. So no API key allows the system to add itself to a system group. Well, by adding itself to a system group, an enrollment user account gets taken over by being a member of that system group, and we push another account down. And this account is a decryption account that actually is going to be used to unlock an encrypted API key that we nest in our script. So through this way, we do security through obfuscation, and we allow ourselves to have an API key that can only be unlocked once we protect it. So now that we've got the API key there, we launch up the registration window and ask users to activate their account. Here is our enrollment group. This is what's happening as the device enrolls. The system adds itself to this enrollment group, and this enrollment group pushes users down to the machine. So once we've got the API key on the system, now's when we can really get creative, because we can essentially do whatever we want to modify this user, bind them to the machine, and set their password. So this account activation step, which we see here, brings up a loop. And this loop is the user lookup section, where if a user types in their email wrong once, we're not just going to say, okay, contact your admin. We're going to give them the option to try again. So this loop that we see here, and this is certainly small, so I understand if you may not be able to read it, I'll bring up a QR code soon to look at it. But the user loop is what's happening at this screen, where the user is able to type in their email, or perhaps you want to use their personal email, or perhaps you want to use something else, which we can look at. This is the step where the user identifies themselves. So there's options here. So inside of the home of this workflow, which is the JumpCloud support ZeroTouch folder, you'll find user configuration modules. And these user configuration modules are exactly the settings that you plug in that define how users activate their accounts. So the one example we've seen here is the company email. We can use personal email as an identifier. We can use company email and a secret word. Perhaps in addition to knowing their email, you want to provide them with some secure, word or phrase that they need to identify themselves to set their password for their account. There's options here. Whatever works for you. And this is an example that shows using the last name and the secret word. For those JumpCloud admins out here, they go, wow, personal email field. All right, I'm ready for it. In reality, what we're doing with this workflow is we're using existing fields on the user. So for personal email, we're using the description field to search for them. And then for the secret word, I'm actually using the employee ID. And I'm using the employee ID field is because that is one of the few fields in JumpCloud outside of username and email that is enforced unique. So the employee ID field has to be unique, which means that two people can't have the same secret. Hence, it's super secret. So setting a password, this is probably the most fun I had in this workflow, which is just a bash loop with a little OSA script that does regex validation on the input. So here we're making sure that people satisfy their password complexity requirements, and you have the options in the setting when we configure this to see how long you want the password to be. With this loop, it brought up a fun challenge, which was PPC, or privacy preferences. So we actually have a payload that we send down to ensure that this can come up, which we will look at. Again, regex validation here. So if complexity isn't satisfied, it'll tell the user what's not right, and they'll have the options to try again. Final thing that happens is the account configuration. And this is the step now that we've identified who the user is, we've got their secure credential, that we're actually going to set their password for their account and bind them to the machine. During this step, we move the system to a couple different groups. We move it out of that enrollment group to the post-enrollment group, and that's going to yank that first enrollment welcome user from the system. So after the system goes through enrollment, you'll be able to see where it is. It'll be in the group det post-enrollment systems group. And you can see if we look on the system, this is the system that enrolled, that there's two users, Jessica, who is directly bound, and our default admin, which we have configured in a way that they get pushed down to every system. User signs in, and they are off to the races. So from a user experience, there's very little opportunity to get out of the swim lanes, but we certainly know that users can get out of the pool whenever they want. So let's take a little time to talk about how we create this flow. So the stuff on the screen is going to be small, so if you're interested in following along and seeing this on your own screens, perhaps without the glare, you can take this QR code. I'll take a drink of water. You got it. Perfect. All right, so all of the documentation lives in the JumpCloud GitHub support wiki. And in the documentation, we're going to find a table of contents that walks us through how we could implement this with our stack. We've got prerequisites. Well, just a question. So how many people in the room have an Apple developer account? Boom, boom, boom. Excellent. Excellent. So of course that's required. We're creating a signed PKG. So this is part of the things that we need to do, which we're going to notarize. Boom. So the prerequisites, of course, a DEP account, MDM server, an Apple developer account, and then in this case, a PKG building tool. I did Monkey PKG, fairly straightforward. And last but not least, users who you wish to enroll into the ZeroTouch workflow, which also means JumpCloud. So the components, I'm not going to read through these definitions, but I've come at you with a lot of phrases. Inside of the documentation, you're going to find definitions for all the different moving pieces, where I've defined what their purpose are, how they interact with one another, and what they're used for. So let's go through a brief overview of the configuration steps. So it all starts with downloading the JumpCloud bootstrap template sh file. And this is a template for you to fill out with the information specific to your organization. This is going to be the payload of the PKG that we create and is what drives the entire workflow. So this lives right in the root of the Prestage user enrollment folder. And the README file is where all the information lives for how to configure it. So once we've got the bootstrap template sh file, the first thing that we'll see is the variables we need to configure. And this really starts in JumpCloud. All these groups that I've shown and talked about, they don't exist. We've got to create them. And we need to grab some identifiers from them to fit them into our script. So things like our dep enrollment groups, and we've got our decryption user. The decryption user, the way that we do that is we actually use their Unix UID to encrypt our API key with our org ID. And that Unix UID is only something that you know, as well as that org ID. In this case, I chose 8675309, and that's what we use to encrypt our string, and we can only decrypt our string when the agent installs on the system. So at no point on the system is there ever a time where they have all three pieces of the puzzle to figure out if they knew what the API key was. The script also deletes itself, so this is really just to secure things for us. There's no risk in terms of that script being in the user's hand or the PKG. So again, the first step starts with configuring settings in JumpCloud, things like users, enrollment groups, and we use these things to populate the variables. So here are the core variables that we start with. We've got our JumpCloud connect key. This is used to install the agent. The encrypted key, which is an encryption process that's well documented. Our decrypt user, and then we've also got the IDs of the groups that we want our system to add itself to when DEP enrollment starts, and remove it and add itself to when DEP enrollment finishes. In addition, we've got just the basic dep notify window title and text. So this experience can be customized to fit your business and branded to fit your flow. Just vanilla dep notify. So anything that you already know how to do or want to do with dep notify, you would fit into this bootstrap script. So once we've got those core variables filled out, then we select a configuration module. So in the configuration module, that's where the options for identification happen. This is going to come down to your organization and your choices. Personally, I like the idea of using the personal email, but that's just me. Users know their personal email. Hopefully we know their personal email. I don't think I can have users guess their company email, but it's a choice for each of us to make. And these configuration modules live inside of the user configuration modules folder. Got two up on the screen, company email and company email with secret. Each one of these modules has an explanation in the header about what it does, how it works, and the fields that it interacts with JumpCloud. What we do is at the bottom here, we actually have one of the modules, and this module has explicit sections that says copy from below this line to above this line, and our main template says insert here. So what we're doing is we're taking sections out, plugging them in, and there's only two sections that we have to take. Fun parts about scripting, things have to happen in order. So this is why this module template was brought in, so that we could have a single script and plug things in. Once we've got that, our PKG is done. So we plug in our variables, we make a couple decisions about how we want to activate our users, and then we get to have fun creating a signed PKG. This step is well documented. There's a lot of tools out there. Monkey PKG is the choice that I went. But before you go down this route, I would ensure you have a developer account. A lot of people do in this room, because you're going to have a bad time if you don't have one and you try to use this. So an example of me using Monkey PKG, that main script that we have, the bootstrap template, is going to go in the payload folder, and then we have a single post install script that we use to call it. Inside of just showing you where this lives, so we put it in private TMP, and we've got our post install script. So for any of us that have implemented JumpCloud, this is the silent installation method for installing the JumpCloud agent with the service account. The JumpCloud service account is required to manage File Vault users, regardless of how you're encrypting your machines. So if JumpCloud is doing the identity management on your machine, you need the service account. Here you can see that I've got my enrollment user and my enrollment user password. And this is a very, very, very important part, because we all want to encrypt, and we want to make sure that we've got the utilities to ensure that we don't get into the secure token crazy land. So here is our post install script. It's creating a text file called JumpCloud Secure Token Creds, and when this installation runs, that file gets deleted. The JumpCloud agent deletes that file during the install process, so it's going to be gone. But this is the post install script that would be updated to include your enrollment user and your enrollment user's password. Finally, now that we've got that, we would create our PKG, and we configure it in the MDM. So again, I use simple MDM because it was simple. So we upload a macOS package. We want to make sure that it's configured for device level installation, which we have to save it before we can get to that setting. So upload it, save it, click on it, get to that setting. And then we are going to create a privacy preferences profile for that OSA script password prompt. So this is fairly straightforward. We've got it copy and pasteable here. We look forward to when simple MDM will allow you to export these. But for now, it's copy and paste. And we're going to scope it to the machines that we want to go through this workflow. So for this example, I've got it auto-deployed to what's cut off on that side of the screen is my test. So we charge through this, but we've come to the end and we're one step closer to that beer, so we're almost there. In summary, implementing pre-stage users enrollments can drastically reduce the setup time for onboarding new users and give you certainty, consistency, and security to your onboarding process. So let's come together and stave the sticky notes and the trees, implementing pre-stage user enrollments. This is a link to that main repo, and with 39 minutes to go, I'm ready for questions. Let's throw the Passbox.
So as you mentioned, the user can use your custom app to change the password, and it will sync with all the other servers. How will that get handled with the local keychain login?
So when the password is changed on the macOS device through the Mac app, it updates the entire machine. So when password changes happen locally, the user account is in a good state. If password changes happen outside, then we get to the process where we have two different logins, where that login is different than the password that's been pushed down. And with JumpCloud, there's an enter old, enter new process when accounts get into that state. But the Mac app specifically is the utility that can be used so that that doesn't happen. So all of our workflows, all the information coming out when users have things like password expirations, inform users to go through the flows on their machine if they have access to it.
I see.
And if they went out to vacation. So
They've forgotten their password. They've gone to vacation for 2 weeks. They come back. They don't remember their password. What's the flow there?
So with our agent on the machine, and if it's encrypted, because JumpCloud securely escrows that key, if it's powered off and they can't get back in, you've got the encryption key to get into it. Once it's unencrypted, the agent can come online. Because you've got that agent there, you control the local account. So one option could be to update their password.
From a local administrator's point of view?
Yes, limitations of a cloud-based directory, though, we need to be online, which are not limitations, but they are realities of directories, right? We communicate with machines through the internet, regardless if it's on the LAN or the WAN. So we need to get that machine online. Once the machine's online, the agent can take over those duties, which could include pushing down a new password. You see how I use that enter password welcome one.
Yep.
You could do the same thing. You could update her first name on her account to be your temp password is cats123, and she would get that information the same way that our flow did. Once she's in, you could update it back to just cats.
So because you're a local agent, there's no chance that the user will ever have to create a new keychain. They will never lose that.
I'm not going to commit to that.
Yeah.
The keychain is a dangerous rainforest. Certainly, there are instances on Mac where keychains get corrupt. But with the Mac app, when those flows go through, that's a happy path. So if we get our users working in the Mac app, we're in a happy path. Any more questions?
What does the process look like for existing machines and user accounts?
So for me, ZeroTouch has always been the concept of out-of-box experience. But certainly when you onboard to a new vendor and you move from one software solution for another, you've got a heck of a lot more existing machines than you have new machines coming in. The way I would think about using this is this PKG could be modified, and it could certainly be modified to present users with the prompt, allow them to identify themselves, and part of starting a new JumpCloud account is actually activating that account. So the workflow would be quite similar. So I wouldn't so much scope it to happen out of the box, but I would apply it likely as a policy through my MDM and have it trigger on an event that I wanted. Maybe it could be after a restart event, and you start by restarting the machine. But with JumpCloud specifically, we're never going to capture an existing password from a key store. Users have to activate their account, and now JumpCloud acts as a source of truth with that account activation, with that secure credential, to push that out to other places. Specifically with account takeover on JumpCloud, if you want to take over an existing account, which we can certainly do, we have to align the username of the user in JumpCloud with the user on the machine. So that's a process that can be done in a number of ways. For admins that don't have a certain list of which users are on which machines, it could start by just getting the JumpCloud agent there. Commands can be used to pull existing users, and we can use that to populate a sheet that we then use to deploy those associations between systems.
Cool. Thank you.
Any more questions we got? All right. I think we're good. Thanks, everyone.